What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Knives of the Round Table. My name is Marco, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Sebenza 25. And the Sebenza 25 is kind of an interesting case in the Chris Reeve lineup, because if you look at the Sebenza 21, which is the one that came before this one, and if you take a look at the Sebenza 31, those two, the knife that came before this one and after this one, those two are very, very similar. In fact, let me show you. I only have a 31. Okay, so the 31 is very similar to the 21, and I think there's slight differences. One is the 31 doesn't have the hole, the locating hole that the 21 had, and the clip is angled to the side. Now this is an aftermarket clip, but even the original clip came angled so that it lands on the scale and not on the lock. So the 21 and the 31 are very, very similar. But then there's this one in the middle, and it's the Sebenza 25. And I think, and all of this is stuff that I've heard. There's not a lot of information, okay? But the Sebenza 25, I think it was kind of celebrating the 25th anniversary of Chris Reeve knives. So they decided to kind of make this model a little bit more unique. But for whatever reason, I think they decided that they wanted to keep the Sebenza as its own kind of model, as its own design. And then they decided, you know what, this is different enough to become its own model. So this one later became the Inkosi, and they decided, you know what, we're just gonna keep a Sebenza lineup that looks like this and an Inkosi lineup that looks like that. So I don't have my full Inkosi because I traded my full-size Inkosi for the Sebenza 25, but I have a small Inkosi. So hopefully I can tell you that, even though this one is a Sebenza, you can see, for example, the pivot, it's more similar to the Inkosi than it is to the Sebenza, right? And then if you see the large washer inside of the Inkosi, you get a very similar one in the Sebenza 25. Now they have changed the washers from the Sebenza 25 to the Inkosi, but it's kind of similar. Now another difference is, the Inkosi has a much more robust stop pin. And so it's kind of a weird thing, but in general, they went from the stop pin of the Sebenza, and then they increased it to the Sebenza 25, and I think they increased it even a little bit more with the Inkosi. But if you had to see these, the Sebenza 25, it's remarkably like the Inkosi. For example, these two are drop points, but if you can see, there's the grind lines and the hollow of the Sebenza, and this is more of a flat stone wash, which you find in the Inkosi. And the blade stock, it's thinner on the Sebenza than it is on the Inkosi. So the Sebenza 25 was kind of it was meant to be kind of the evolution of the Sebenza, but at some point they decided, the Sebenza is such an iconic knife that they wanted to keep the same lines of the knife, the same handle ergonomics, the same pivot, washers, and all of that. So they decided, instead of changing it to this, to make this its own. So if you take a look, the finger grooves that are more ergonomic on the Sebenza 25 look a lot similar to what you find in the Inkosi. And if you compare the scales of the Inkosi and the Sebenza 25, you find that they're very, very, very similar, or damn near identical. And so the Sebenza 25 was kind of a step that they took, and then they decided, you know what, it looks good. It's a good enough knife to make it its own model, so they turned it into the Inkosi, and that's what this one is. So that's why you can't find Sebenza 25s anymore. Now you can find Inkosis and you can find Sebenza 31s, but you can no longer find Sebenza 25s. And that's kind of the reason I traded for it. It's kind of a unique knife, and especially this one. So there was a variety of Sebenza 25s that were sold, but this specific one was the Blade HQ exclusive with the carbon fiber inlays, and hopefully that's coming across. So there's the typical micartas that you get in some of the Sebenzas, but this one is the Blade HQ exclusive. So one of the things that has changed, so the 31, as I said, the clip is angled, and in the Inkosi, so again, this is the small Inkosi, and this is also an aftermarket clip. But the Inkosi, the new one, also has the pocket clip angle such that it doesn't touch the lock bar. So that's kind of an introduction. It's kind of a very interesting case. It's a little bit of kind of knife history, and I enjoy those things very much. So if all you wanted to find out is what the heck is a Sebenza 25, then this is where you stop watching the video. Now, some of the video is going to be a little bit of what my review of the Sebenza 31 was, and some of the video is going to be what the review of my full-size Inkosi. Again, this is the small one, but there's a review up on my channel of the full-size Inkosi. So let me kind of give you a little bit of a tour of the knife, and then we can get on with kind of a faster review, because I'm going to kind of rehash some of the points that we saw before. So what we have here is a 3.5-inch blade. I can show you here. 3.5-inch blade, and this is, again, it's a saber grind. It has a little bit of a flat, and then it's got a flat grind on the primary bevel. This is S35EN. This is back when so again, because this is from some years back, I think the birth card of this one is like 2016 or thereabouts. So S35EN was kind of cutting edge at the time. It was one of the first ones that went from S30 to S35EN. Chris Reeve being involved in the development of those steels. So it was revolutionary at the time. It was really, really high end steel. Now there's a lot of stuff with S35EN and S30 and S30V, but at the time that this came out, it was really, really high end steel. It has this very interesting jimping, where it's not, the more standard jimping that you find on knives. It's just lines that are very uniform, kind of what you see here in the Para 2. Very uniform lines. And what they've done here is kind of interesting. There's jimping, and then there's kind of a deeper one, and then there's a little bit of jimping, and then there's a deeper one that is very attractive. They carried that over to the Inkosi. You can see it on the Inkosi as well. But it was kind of a neat thing that they did for that one. If you take a look at the Sebenza, they didn't do that in the Sebenza. The Sebenza has the typical, just regular jimping, and I think this is a little bit more attractive. So you have titanium frame lock, which Chris Reeve invented, and here you do have the pocket clip landing on the lock bar. In this case, most of the titanium has been polished, except for the lock bar that reaches kind of underneath. This is kind of their bead blasted, more standard titanium that you see. So it's kind of the same thing with this version of the Sebenza. It's polished on this side, and it's the kind of blasted titanium that you see on this side. Again, this is the Blade HQ exclusive that they did. So this has carbon fiber inlays. I think that looks really nice, and it has the blue anodized studs. Now I did get this aftermarket, so it's been flipped quite a bit. As you can see, the anodizing on the thumb studs has been used, right? So ergonomics on this knife are phenomenal. Okay, I really like the ergonomics on on the Inkosi, and this is kind of the birthplace of the Inkosi, the Sebenza 25. When I did my battle between the Inkosi and the Sebenza 31, one of the things that I said is that the ergonomics of the Inkosi versus the ergonomics of the Sebenza has a much more neutral handle, but in my hand, I wear large gloves. In my hand, these grooves just guide your hand and lock your hand in such a nice way that is just much better than the Sebenza. So the ergonomics on the Sebenza 25, it does feel like an evolution ergonomically for the Sebenza, and so that's one of the reasons that I'm going to link to my Chris Reeve brand overview. And this one, I didn't have this one at the time that overview was done, but if for the people that want to try out Chris Reeve, I recommend the Inkosi for that reason. So the ergonomics on the Sebenza 25 are just outstanding. Cutting performance, so it's damn near as good as what you see from the Sebenza. Oh, well, let me finish with cutting, and then I'll give you some size comparisons. But it's the same size of a Sebenza, so it's going to be very similar to those comparisons. So it's very similar. It's very similar to a cutting of a Sebenza. It's a little bit heavier duty. The Sebenza 25 is a little bit heavier duty. It doesn't have the hollow grind, so the blade, it's a little bit more robust and a little bit less slicey. So I think this was meant to be a little bit heavier use, and the Inkosi certainly is a heavier duty use knife than the Sebenza 21 or the 31. But let me just show you what the size of this thing is. So again, it's the same size of an Inkosi and a Sebenza 21 or 31. That's a para 2, a para 3, so very similar in shape as the para 2, but it's much easier to carry just because it falls to a much slimmer profile. It's much heavier, titanium, being titanium and all, but it's much slimmer in profile. It's not quite a bug out, right? But it's also not too far from it. And that's what they look deployed. So certainly more in the size range of the para 2. Now, fit and finish on Chris Reeve knives, outstanding. And this is kind of the first knife that I've had from Chris Reeve that is aftermarket, and because it was purchased or made in 2016, I bought it on secondary market. I traded for it. Well, I didn't buy it. I traded for it, and so it's become so smooth. You saw it kind of drop there. It's become so smooth, and the deployment is so much better. So this is, it's well broken in, and the washers and the steel has been polished, over 5 or 6 years of use. So I'm really very much hoping that my Sebenza ends up with the same action that we get from this. And so the fit and finish, I took it apart, put it back together, and it's just the fit and finish on Chris Reeve knives is just legendary. It's incredibly good. It's incredibly precise. It's one of the most trustworthy tools that you can find in the knife world. They're, I think they're falling a little bit behind the times in terms of actions, with flipper tabs and bearings and those kinds of things. But you can't deny the quality of the product that they put out. It's really, really, really outstanding. The action, so on this particular one, the action is phenomenal. And it's because, again, it's a 5 or 6 year old knife, and it's been flipped, and it's been carried, and it's been used. So the fact that it's broken in so well, the action is just much better than my Sebenza that is only probably about a year and a half old. So I would say that the action of this one is better than the action of my Sebenza, but in reality is that it's just a function of the time. So the action on these things, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's going to be a little bit stiff in the beginning. You know, you're going to have to kind of slow roll them out, or you're going to have to give it some rest to deploy them, you know, but eventually they become that. You know, it's kind of a dampened drop shut, if you will. So action is it's kind of stiff, more of a rollout at the beginning, and then it starts getting smoother and smoother and smoother and smoother until it becomes something like what you saw there, you know, where it just goes like that, and it's perfectly centered. There's no side play, there's no up and down play, there's nothing. It's just really nice action on this one. So again, this was kind of a faster review, because again, if you want to see more detail, you can see the review of my Sebenza 31 or my Inkosi. But I did want to touch on the history of how this one came about and how the Inkosi was born, and why the 21 and the 31 are so similar, with the middle child being so dramatically different from those two. So the airing of grievances, I think the only thing that I think they did very well in the evolution was the pocket clip, angling the pocket clip such that it lands on the scale and not the lock bar like this one does. Now make no mistake, this carries very nicely in the pocket, but the angled, it helps it push the knife towards the right side of your pocket, so that's nice. And the second is that when you disengage the lock bar, you don't have to push against both the tension in the lock bar and the pocket clip, you know, because that right now it's touching. So whenever you have to disengage the lock bar, then you have to move the pocket clip aside as well. So I think that's kind of the only my only airing of grievance. Other than that, I'm really happy with this knife. I'm glad I traded for it, and if you find one, I think it's worth having. They're kind of rare, so you have to kind of jump on it. But otherwise, I still do recommend the Inkosi over the Sebenza, unless you really want, you know, the prettier, you know, the wood, the unique graphics, or the computer-generated graphics of the Sebenza. Guys, hopefully this has been helpful for you. Hopefully this has been fun for you. If you did, then like and subscribe. Don't get notified. You know where to find my videos if you want to see my content. Until I see you at the next one, take care.